Hey everybody, welcome back to Walking with Jesus Daily. We are in day 248 and we are continuing on in Luke chapter 15. We've kind of been building up to this point of the chapter. If we remember who Jesus is speaking with and what he's saying, the order of these things, the audience, the timing, all of these things are highly important for us to understanding the whole picture, especially for what we're going to start studying today, which is known as the Prodigal Son. We're gonna see things about God. We're gonna see things here that are beautiful. We're gonna recognize ourselves. And hopefully we're not sitting here thinking about someone else the entire time, but instead we're thinking about ourselves. If you're looking at someone else and you are thinking about all the things that they need to do better, or the things that they need to repent from, or the things that whatever, then you are sadly mistaken, because you are that person. We are that person. Jesus comes and cleanses us. That blood is holy, but it's important that if we see other people lost and being misled in sin, it's important that we pray for them and that we realize that, we're one decision away. We're one poor decision away from joining that person. Our armor has to be on at all times, and if you haven't put your armor on today, I highly encourage and pray that you do. You have your belt of truth and your breastplate of righteousness, your helmet of salvation, right? You have your shoes, your boots that bring the gospel of peace. You have your shield of faith and your sword of the Spirit. And these are, like it or not, guys, we are in battle. We were born into battle. We were born into war. Nobody would just walk around war smiling and hanging with the enemy. They would realize and understand that they're in war. I hate to put it like in a militant way, but that's how it's described. We can't see the evil forces around us, but we know what they are. We just have to believe that, and then we have to go and we have to do our best. And then inside of all that, our own flesh desires evil. So you want to talk about a war? We're in a constant war. We are in a constant war. So let's dig into Luke 15 here, 11 through 25, and let God speak through His Word. Right now, remember, the tax collectors and sinners, even non-observant Jews, were coming near to listen to Jesus. Jesus had been speaking with the Pharisees, right? And it says both the Pharisees and the scribes began muttering and complaining because He welcomes and accepts sinners. So now we have Pharisees, we have scribes, we have tax collectors, we have sinners. So we have the most self-righteous and the most sinful in the eyes of the self-righteous people gathered in one place to listen to Jesus speak. So imagine that we have thieves and liars that are dressed like thieves and liars, and then we have thieves and liars that are dressed like the people who are holy. And I'm sure there are people in between there, but just imagine this crowd. Okay, this is very important. So he talks about 100 sheep and losing one. Then he talks about 10 coins and losing one. You see how we're working this in and how excited it is when you find that one. And now he moves in to verse 11. Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons. So 110, 2 sons. The younger of them inappropriately said to his... Let me read an ESV first. I'm so sorry. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. All right, a lot there. Let's check it out in Amplified real quick. I love the progression here that Jesus does. He talks about sheep, and they all understand how important it would be to find that one sheep out of 100, and that they would celebrate, and then to find one of those coins. One out of 10, and how they would celebrate that. And now we're talking about a human. Remember, the scribes and the Pharisees are upset that Jesus is eating and associating with these sinners, right? And with that being said, Jesus brings up this story. So he lets them see that their possessions, what they own, matter to them to the point that they would celebrate if they lost one and found it. But a human life, not so much. But we'll read more into that in a minute. All right. The prodigal son. Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons. The younger of them inappropriately said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that falls to me. So he divided the estate between them. And this is in Deuteronomy 21:15 through 17. And we can read that real quick. Deuteronomy 21:15. Where it says, if a man has 2 wives, one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons, and the firstborn son belongs to the unloved wife, then on the day when he wills his possessions to his sons, he cannot treat the son of his loved wife as firstborn in the place of the unloved wife, the actual firstborn. Now, what's crazy is here we're talking about Jews and Gentiles, but whatever. Instead, he shall acknowledge the son of the unloved as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has. For he was the beginning of his strength, generative power. To him belongs the right of the firstborn. All right? If you read 18 and 19 in that, you'll kind of see a difference in Jesus' teachings. The way that God truly feels. But we'll go back to Luke. Verse 13, a few days later, so after the son had asked for his inheritance, he was blessed. His father gave it to him. And it says a few days later, the younger son gathered together everything that he had and traveled to a distant country. So he's headed to the big city. And there he wasted his fortune in reckless and immoral living. He chose to go and take what he had and just live however he wanted to. No rules, reckless and immoral. And we can put this in the context of however we want. In these days, perhaps it was many sexual encounters, gambling, drinking and drug use, any kind of evil or debauchery could have been taking place. You can imagine someone who is overtaken by the world to the point that their entire, imagine someone going and just cashing out their retirement and their savings and selling everything they had and just going and living in a city. They could live there for a while and just toss money around like it was nothing. But eventually that money comes to an end, and that's what we find out here. He wasted his fortune, it says, in reckless and immoral living. It says, now when he had spent everything, okay, he's out, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to do without and be in need. So a famine happened, and we know what happens when things are short, right? We experience that with this recent pandemic over the last couple of years that we've tried to run this thing. But to watch the price of toilet paper rise to such a high, and to see people hoarding things, then you go out and try to buy something and you can't buy anything. And now everything is quite a bit more expensive than it was a couple years ago, and we're talking like a lot of things have doubled. So imagine in the good years, let's say 5 years ago, a dollar went a lot further than it goes now. So you were wasting up your money, and then all of a sudden, that piece of bread that you need is become unaffordable because you're out. And at one point you did have enough, and now you don't. That's what this famine is doing. So not only are things more expensive and more scarce, but now you have less people willing to share or help out. They're looking out for their own needs. And that's kind of where we're at here. He spent everything, and a severe famine occurred in that country. He began to do without and be in need. So he went and forced himself on one of the citizens of the country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. Now, if we're talking about a Jewish man here, this is literally feeding slop to an animal that is considered unclean. So you say, well, why doesn't this guy just return home and say sorry? Well, he's getting ready to. But imagine the amount of pride and the amount of selfish thinking that this took to get to this point. It doesn't say anything about this son being disobedient before this point. It just talks about it here. So was it the blessing of having all of this stuff that drove him into this city, or was it the city that drove him to ask for his part of the inheritance? In verse 16 it says, he would have gladly eaten the carob pods that the pigs were eating, but they could not satisfy his hunger, and no one was giving anything to him. This was it. He was on his own. He had nothing. He wanted to eat the food that the pigs were eating. It was crazy. But when he finally came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have more than enough food, while I am dying here of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Just treat me like one of your hired men. So he got up, came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with compassion for him, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. Do you see who the father is looking for? And the son said to the father, Father, I have sinned against heaven, and in your sight I am no longer worthy to be called your son. This is a humbled son. But the father said to his servants, quickly, bring out the best robe for the guest of honor, and put it on him, and give him a ring for his hand, and sandals for his feet. And bring the fattened calf and slaughter it. And let us invite everyone, and feast, and celebrate. For this son of mine was as good as dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and has been found. So they began to celebrate. Now we can read this from many different ways, but if we see this from the superficial, worldly standpoint, We see a son who's getting what he deserves, and when he returns, what should be waiting for him is discipline, disappointment, anger, pain, and hurt by the Father. How does the Father treat this prodigal son? This son who chose himself over all. Not only did he get his portion of his inheritance, but then he left. This is important because his dad might have needed help. If his dad was getting older, he would need help taking care of things that are there around the house, around the property. And if that's the case, not only did he abandon his family, not only did he take everything they had, but also the teachings. I can't imagine the pain that would have been associated with this father when he gives everything to his son, only to find in a couple days after he did this, his son grabs everything, packs it up, and leaves. He walks away from you. You're standing there pleading with him to stay. And what you see is his backside, because he's walking away, and he's walking into the world, and he's walking into a place that's going to devour him. And you know it, and you can't convince him. This is our Father with us. This is our Father with Israel. This is our Father with Gentiles. We are brought to him. He brings us up. He takes care of us. He gives us everything that we need. And then we walk away. How heartbreaking. And then we go and we're selfish. And we spend a whole bunch of money on ourselves. And we focus on ourselves constantly. Me. And as we do this, as we focus on ourselves and forget about God, he never forgets about us. This young man was to the point that he was associating with people who did not believe in the one true God. He was wasting his money on things of the father Satan. And I say the father Satan just not because I call him a father, but because there's so many people that are sons and daughters of Satan and don't even realize it. He's all the way to the point that he's serving the world, and the world hates him. The world who used to love him, he now has nothing to offer. So since he has nothing to offer, he's taken advantage of and destroyed. And he's feeding pigs. And there's so much to go along with that, with the Jewish faith. He's feeding pigs. He wants to eat what the pigs are eating. He has hit rock bottom. And if you've been at rock bottom, you understand. So it says he comes to his senses. He humbles himself. And he repents before God. And he says, you know what? I've made this decision. I've gone on this journey away from God with great pride. I'm going to return with great humility before God, before my Father. I'm going to admit my sins. I'm going to make it clear that I am not good enough to be called your son. I am terrible. What I have done is unforgivable. So because of that, I'm returning and I'm just asking you to let me be a hired person, a servant. Because where I'm at is a severe famine. There's nothing. So all of these things, all of this terrible stuff had to take place so that this son could see the truth. Some of us learn that way. Sinners and tax collectors, that's what we're referring to here. Some of us learn in the way that is so painful and so truly avoidable, but we don't allow that to happen. So he returns, and as he returns, his father sees him from far off. Imagine how many days his father spent looking on the horizon, remembering his son walk away, remembering what that looks like, and just being filled with so much hope and wonder. If today's the day, I look on the horizon and there's my son. And then it happens. And the joy of the father is overwhelmed. He doesn't even care what all this son of his has done and wasted. And it's everything. And he'll somehow get to that point where he sees it. But he's so excited to see his son. He gets up and goes to him. It says that he ran. The father has compassion in his heart. What he saw leave his presence was a very proud, healthy, wealthy young man. And who is returning is a very humble, young man who's lost everything. This compassion, this great compassion of the Father is so great. He runs to him and he kisses him. He embraces him. He's so happy to see him. The son says to the Father, Father, I sinned against heaven and in your sight. I have sinned against God. God knows terrible things that I've done. I'm not worthy to be called son. And the father throws a celebration. Now remember, a celebration was thrown because the sheep was found. A celebration was thrown because a coin was found. Is not a human more valuable than a sheep or a coin? Yes, obviously. But with that being said, do we feel that way? It's tomorrow's lesson as we get into that. So the father puts a robe on him and a ring and sandals. He cleans him up. He makes him the guest of honor. He's so excited that he's here that he takes the fattened calf and they slaughter it. And they throw this feast to celebrate. He said, because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he's found. So they celebrate. It talks about the angels in heaven celebrate over one sinner who has repented. than over all the righteous who have remained righteous. And if you're righteous, truly, you too celebrate a sinner who has come home. It is worthy of being celebrated. So we're talking many different levels here. We're talking about a son in a prodigal sense that is returned home, that has humbled himself, or been humbled rather. We're talking about a nation, Israel, who multiple times has gone and been the prodigal son, and multiple times has come back to God, and multiple times God has taken care of their every need and accepted them back. And now it's all the way down to us. Us. Every one of us has walked away from God in some way or another. All of us. If that's the case, can you hear the words of Jesus? He says, return, come back to me. I'm not going to scold you. I'm not going to tell you everything you've done wrong. I'm going to wrap you up in my arms. We're going to throw a celebration. You've repented. You've returned to me from where you came from. And because of that, that is worthy of having a party. That is worthy of celebration. I will accept you back. I don't care what you've done. Addicted to drugs and alcohol and prostitution and gambling and all the things of this world, I don't care. I forgive you. It's gone. Like it was never there. And because of that, you can come back to me as if it never happened. How amazing is this? You're set free. Guys, this is us. Jesus is trying to tell us in front of the righteous, the self-righteous, the sinners, all the people. He's telling us, and he's making it clear to us, there is no point at which you cannot return to me. Every moment I am watching. Every moment the Father is watching, waiting for you to return. I tried to shorten up today's lesson because it could go forever. Can we just remember? Can we just have hope in knowing that Jesus came so that we could be found? He is the way back to the Father. And when you return to the Father, he sees his Son. He doesn't see mistakes. He sees his Son. He doesn't see all the things, all the sin. We need to humble ourselves and repent before our mighty God, who loves us and keeps us. Let's see the second half tomorrow. Love you guys.